Hello everybody and welcome to the Goldbridge channel. No Time to Die James Bond review. I have done reviews before on this channel and I tell you what, this feels to me like it is a moment in history, especially if you're into this amazing franchise that to me has been a massive part of my life. Like I remember Saturday afternoons as a kid, Christmases, watching Roger Moore, Sean Connery, James Bond. I nearly called him George Bond. They may as well call him George Bond because they've messed up the franchise. Spoilers will be in this and I'll give you the warning when I'm going to hit in. But look, James Bond's been a massive part of my life and I'm sure it's a massive part of many other people's lives. And this film, No Time to Die, I would say it didn't hit the mark for me, but not in the sense that it was like watching Free Willy 3 or something like that, which isn't a porn film. It's probably the one with the big dolphin thing. But the reality is, it's not a bad film that I would say don't go and watch. The first 20 minutes, I sat there and I was like, look, part of it was the elation of being back in the cinema for the first time since COVID, but also the cinema experience, the James Bond experience. I really enjoyed the first 20 minutes. The intro's really good, the action, very, very good. And I was just very, very happy. But then coming out of the cinema at the end, there was a tear in my eye. But some of that was for the emotion. But some of that was because, you know, I didn't actually enjoy what happened at the end of this film. So we're going to go through that. But what I would say is go and watch the film. Because where this is going to take James Bond and where this is going to be when the next James Bond comes out, I'll put my hands up and say this could be a masterstroke. The fact that it's created so much conversation, the fact that they've gone in a very different route. It could work. You know, change isn't always a bad thing. But for me, when it comes to James Bond, I think they met the challenge and backed themselves into a corner where they've had to go in a new direction because they felt that they didn't want to repeat the past. But ultimately, is that, in my opinion, as a creative, I think there were other ways they could have gone with this. You can keep recreating the stories of the past in intelligent, clever new ways. And I think that because it was Daniel Craig's last film, they went down this route, and I think it just doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel right to me. And I just want to say as well, do go and watch the film. I would recommend watching the film, and I will watch the film again, even though I don't like how it goes. And there's many reasons for that, which I'm about to discuss. But I would say that this guy behind me is the best James Bond. I think the way they've... And look, and it was a new direction, which is why I'm saying the next step is one to watch, because when Casino Royale came out, a lot of people weren't interested in Daniel Craig, didn't think he was the right fit. You know, they've took it down that sort of Bourne Identity route where, you know, a lot more action, a lot more hard hitting, a darker James Bond, less of the jokes, less of the cliches. I really have enjoyed this run. And yeah, look, I don't think that Spectre was that good but the reality is, I think this film was a bit of a Poundland Skyfall. And Skyfall did it better. But look, I'm going to give you the warning. We're going to hit into the spoilers now because I'm going to reveal things from the film. So if you haven't seen the film yet, or, you know, if you watch the next bit, you're going to find things out about the film. So look, let me hit the elephant in the room. They killed off James Bond. That is the biggest spoiler. That is the biggest spoiler of the whole last however many years James Bond's been going. And I've got to say straight away, you don't kill off James Bond. It destroys everything. You know, even The Simpsons. You know, when I think of James Bond, I think about the laser beam going up between the legs. I don't even know if that actually happened in a film. I think it did happen, didn't it? But the reality is, oh no, James Bond's going to die. And then he doesn't die. He finds a way out of it. But in this film, he doesn't. He gets vaporized. He gets blown to smithereens of his own accord. You know, he decides not to get away. And maybe he was going to die from the gunshot wounds anyway. But the reality is, they left no room, and it was no time to die. You know, that's the funny thing. It was no time to die. You don't kill off James Bond. But they backed themselves into that corner because I feel that Daniel Craig, over the run of his James Bond films, had definitely, you know, retired, wasn't going to come back, been moody. You know, every film seemed to have that element in it. He was always fighting the system. And ultimately, could they do another film with that? Well, no, they couldn't because Daniel Craig didn't want to do another film. And as we know, his girlfriend from the last film followed on into this film. Now, if you kill the girlfriend off, then you've seen that before. It happened with George Lazenby and Her Majesty's Secret Service, or whatever that film was called. And also, you wouldn't have had... How impactful would it have been to kill off the girl? It would have been impactful in that film, but there would have been no revenge mission because this was the end for Daniel Craig. So I think that they've gone in this direction and they faced that challenge, which I accept as a creative. It is, you know, anybody would look at that and go, how do you close this story off when you know it's Daniel Craig's last film? There can't be kill off the girlfriend and, you know, his mates or anything like that because he won't have any revenge in the future films because it's not going to be him. But killing off James Bond is such a big thing to do. And they have killed him off. Like, there's no coming back because Daniel Craig's not coming back. So you can't have a new actor like Idris Elba or, you know, Tom Hardy. Oh, I've survived it, but I've got a different face. You know, that's not going to happen. So they've made this massive decision to kill James Bond off for the first time. And I just feel let down. I just feel disappointed because, yes, we live in a world where everything's got to change. And look, mate, you know, I don't agree that there should be a female James Bond, by the way. Just create a female character that has her own series. You know, I don't think Wonder Woman should be a man. Like, Wonder Woman's a woman and James Bond is a man. But if they're going to go down... So you don't need to change things. You have to modernise things. You know, look at some of the previous James Bonds. There was, you know, all sorts of things that you couldn't do now. But James Bond is James Bond. The name's Bond. James Bond. And ultimately, you just don't kill off James Bond. You just don't. And I know some people really like that that's happened, but I think the people who like it because it's a new direction. But do you need a new direction? It's a martini shaken, not stirred. It's the Aston Martin car. It's you don't kill off James Bond. And, you know, it's not a weekly episode. It's not like he gets away with it every week. We get one of these films every 3 or 4 years. Not killing James Bond is part of it. The story around that certainty is where you make good films. In Casino Royale, he doesn't die. He nearly dies, but he doesn't die. In many other films, he doesn't die. You create story themes and tragedies and excitement around that constant. And I'm just really disappointed that they killed him off. And if it wasn't James Bond, if that was just a film on its own, you know, and it was Daryl Smith, and he's an agent, the film's very good. It's very self-contained. It's very, you know, melancholy. It's very tragic. But to do it to James Bond, and what happens in the next film? Oh, it's a different James Bond, but we call him James Bond because it's a testament to the one. Or is it just going to be... I think what they need to do is, that was Daniel Craig's James Bond, that was his story. The next person is James Bond. There's no reference to anything before, you just carry on. Like we've seen with Pierce Brosnan, like we've seen with Roger Moore and Timothy Dalton, they have their own stories. But the problem is, when we get the next James Bond and he's like, he's done 3 or 4 films I might not do anymore, or you don't know whether he's going to do any more, you go and watch that film and you're like, well, they might kill him off. And now all bets are off. And some people think, well, all the bets are off, that's really good. But I think that actually, I don't like that. I don't like that. And I'm not massive on change, but I just don't like the killing off. And I think people, as I say, some people think it's really clever. For me, you just don't kill James Bond off. I've been watching these films since I was a young kid. He never dies. And now they've killed him off. And I tell you what, I walked out of that cinema and I went and watched it on a Friday afternoon at about 1 o'clock. So a lot of people in work, a lot of people in school, a lot of people in college, a lot of people in that cinema were old. I was watching people as they came out and they were upset. And I actually really don't think that the writers and everybody else has clicked with this. James Bond is popular because it transcends many generations. Some people have been watching this since the 60s, the 70s, certainly the 80s. They were upset coming out because they were like, you know, this is something that's constant in their life and you've just took it away. James Bond always survives. The fact that James Bond dies, I was thinking about, I mean, I'm not particularly young. I was thinking, well, if James Bond can die, we all can die. And we know we're all going to die. We know we're all mortal. But James Bond is not meant to die. It's a fantasy. I just didn't like that. But as I said, go and watch the film because I think it's really good. I mean, what I would say as well is the reason he dies is just bloody ridiculous. I thought the Remy Malek as the baddie didn't make any sense. I don't actually understand what his point was in the whole film. I realise his family got killed and that was quite interesting, but why was he trying to wipe out everybody? And people can say, well, there's no clarity in in somebody who's mad, but the reality is you want a little bit more depth to your bad guy. I mean, a broken mask and a nice costume. He's a better actor than that. They could have done a lot more with him. You know, the little girl, that just didn't work for me, really. And also, at the end of the film, basically, Bond thinks he's killed him and he's opened up the blast doors and he realises that he's got this poison in him that he'll never be able to touch his girlfriend again because it'll kill her. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to die then. All these films I've made, all the lives I've saved. I'm still only in my early 50s. I could save a lot more people, but I'm going to be selfish and kill myself because I can't touch my wife in the future, and so I'm just going to give up. And I was like, it didn't make any sense. And this is probably the most clippable bit for me. Killing off James Bond, fine. If you're going to do it, do it. But in the circumstances they did it, it went against everything James Bond is to me. So basically, he gets infected with this thing that if he touches his girlfriend, it'll kill her. And he will always have this on him. So if he touches his girlfriend, it'll kill her. They could have maintained a relationship on Zoom or something like that, of course. But the reality is he's in love with this girl. The interesting thing is, he's not seen her for 5 years. They broke up because of, something that was a bit iffy. Did she try to kill him or not? Probably. Well, no, she didn't. But she then pisses off and as a child never tells him, and they sort of come back into contact because of a job he's working on. And you're like, well, this is the girl that you left. She's in the same country as you. She's got your kid. She doesn't bother to get in contact, but now she loves you again, which she obviously always did, and now you love her. But you've been without each other for 5 years. She's raised a kid without you. You get back together for 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes, and you're like, oh, I've got this infectious thing. If I touch her again, it'll kill her. It'll kill her. I can't live without her. But you've just lived without her for 5 years. So I just found that a little bit... And I'm like, at the end of the day, James Bond has always found his way out of things. James Bond has always been there to save us. And he just goes, this girl that I'm in love with, are you in love with her? You've not spent that much time together, even before you broke up for 5 years. But this girl you're in love with, you're going to end it all because of her. And she's got a kid. And the world needs James Bond. And you think, you know what? I'm just going to give up and get myself blown up. And that, to me, isn't James Bond. So I didn't really get that. I thought, you know what? At the end of the day, there's always a way out. And just break up. Break up. But they had to close off the Daniel Craig James Bond story. And as I said, for me, the best way to do it was to kill the girl. I'm not being sexist, but it creates drama and conflict and tragedy in James Bond. And, but they couldn't do that because he's not coming back. So they sort of backed themselves into a corner. They've got to start afresh with something else, and I'm sure that'll be fine. But I just don't like whether it was Pierce Brosnan, Sean Connery, Roger Moore. I'd have hated to kill them off, so why should I not hate? And that's a great point. If they killed Roger Moore off at the end in View to Kill, or anybody else, I'd have hated it. So why should I like the fact that they've killed off my favourite Bond at the very end? I knew it was his last film, but I just didn't like it. I don't like that. But some people will. But as I said, as a film, the action bits were good. It was a little bit long. I thought the baddie was a bit weak. But all in all, I would say go and watch the film and make your own mind up. It's certainly not a terrible film. I just think there's things in it that will go, I didn't like that. But as I said, where would it rank out of the James Bond films for Daniel Craig? For me, my favourite one is Skyfall. My second favourite is Casino Royale, and I'd probably put this one in at third out of the 5 he's done, because there are good bits to it. It's certainly a new direction, and in time will tell. It could be the best thing that ever happened to Bond. You give that uncertainty that he can die. But I felt that it was like Skyfall, but a Poundland version. And what I mean by that is that they killed Judi Dench, and that was very, very sad at the end of Skyfall. And it was a very tragic end, and it felt like, well, now we'll kill Bond, and it didn't work as well as Skyfall, which had a really good baddie in it as well. So look, be very interested to see what your comments are. I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover about it. I did take some notes, which I've not been looking at it. The baddie was confusing. The positives were the action. I would go and watch it. The killing him off just didn't do for me. It could work. It could work. But we'll just have to wait and see. Will I be putting myself forward for Bond? No, they wouldn't go for me. But no, I have enjoyed it. I've ruined myself with that. I did enjoy it, the Daniel Craig era. It's very sad that it's come to an end. Forgetting this film, I really enjoyed Daniel Craig as James Bond. I just think it worked from minute one and to the end. But it's over now, and we'll see what they bring for the franchise next. Who would be my next Bond? My standout is Tom Hardy. I mean, Richard Madden, who was in Game of Thrones and is in the new Marvel thing, I think he'd work, but I don't think he'd be as good as Daniel Craig. Idris Elba, I think he's just a little bit old. I don't mind the fact that, a black James Bond, so what? That doesn't bother me at all. I just think he's a little bit old. I think, 10 years ago that would have worked. And when I say he's a bit old, I think he's nearly 50. And, you'd want him to do 5 films, in which case he'd be doing it in his mid-60s. So I think you've got to look at that. I wouldn't have a female one. There's not a female a male Wonder Woman. So for me, that's just it. You could have a spin-off. You know, they had a 007 who was female in this film. I had no issue with that. But James Bond is James Bond. He's not Janet Bond. Other contenders, I just think Daniel Craig brought a danger to James Bond, a personality. And as I say, Richard Madden, there's a couple of others that are just, they look like they'd be a sort of Pierce Brosnan James Bond, which is nothing wrong with that. But you want something a bit edgy. And I think someone like a Tom Hardy would just bring a real edge to it. The trouble is has Tom Hardy done so many other things that he can't be James Bond? You know, I think you've got to have a background in other stuff, but be James Bond. Could Tom Hardy be James Bond, or is he too big at other things now? But then he's so creative in his acting that, yeah, maybe he could do. But I just think Daniel Craig was perfect. It's going to be very difficult to top it, and it's going to be very difficult to come back from what they've done. But look, get your comments in below. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. Really great, actually, to be back doing a movie review. I think the last one I did was Star Wars, which I'll drop the link in the description. I don't do many of these, but it felt like it needed to be done on such a cultural, massive franchise. And the end of an era with Daniel Craig. Did you like it? Thanks for watching.